Uh, Hello, hello to each of you in your respective places. I am hoping that you're doing better than well, wherever you may be in the world. I love the fact that we have all of this access to technology. As they say, we're hyper connected these days, not just because of COVID, but because we actually get to meet people all over the world. And I am excited about my guest today, as she is uh, literally a internet sensation in my book. And I've been following her for quite a while now. So this is a joy for me to have this special guest. But first, I want to welcome each of you to Conversations in the Nick of Time. I'm your host, Nikki Roach, and want to send a big thank you to Sparkman Pathway, to Careers Sparkman Publication, KSTL 690 AM, and Covenant Exchange for your continuous support and sponsorship to make this platform possible. And it's so funny because just when you think, oh, just podcast, just a vlog, just a blog, no, this is actually really a radio show. And people crack me up when they tell me I actually turned the knob to actually listen to the station. So I want to say thank you to each of you. As we begin to shift our thoughts and invite a new voice to this platform, will not be the last time, because the topics that she so graciously articulates, especially when it comes to women of color, Black women in the workplace, and the various types of support that we need, but also things that we need to also focus on and consider inward when we search inward within ourselves. I want to welcome to this platform and introduce to some Dr. Carrie Yazid, and she is calling from Louisiana, the dirty South. And you will hear this Southern smoothness in her voice in just a moment. But just to give you a little background, author, employee empowerment speaker. She's certified in diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. Dr. Yazid helps diverse workers to feel included by partnering with companies and organizations to develop workplaces that advocate belonging, which we know that is a real topic today. She is the publisher of 2 anthologies, Shut 'Em Down, Black Women, Racism, and Corporate America, which was a #1 new release on Amazon. Congrats. And Everyday Struggle, How Toxic Workspaces Impact Black Women. She's been featured in Forbes, ABC News, Essence, Bustle, Glamour, New York Post, just to name a few. And today, honored, celebrating, holding on to my seat to hear this wisdom that Dr. Yazid will share. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm always amazed when I hear people introduce me, and I'm like, "Oh, that's me. Okay, you go, girl."
No, you definitely have been going. You have I have tuned in a couple times on your lives, and oh my God, the topics that you are hitting. We'll touch on some of those, but when I say timely, timely. So I am following you from the distance.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you from.
Well, I think you kind of nailed it. I'm from South Louisiana. I'm 60 miles outside of New Orleans, Louisiana. So I tell people, if you hear a little country twang, that's what it is. I am informal, but I'm not uninformed. I'm very informed on what's going on.
Love that.
Let's see, HBCU graduate. So I'm a graduate of Southern University, A&M College, Tulane University, and I got my PhD from Louisiana State University in higher education, leadership, and research. And I've been writing and self-published since 2006, 2007. So I've been doing this for a while. And before I moved into, I guess you could say, like the DEI and the organizational justice spaces, I was a clinical social worker for 23 years. And of those 23 years, 20 of those years, I actually had my own private practice, and I taught in higher education at several universities.
Okay, adjunct faculty member.
No, assistant professor.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So you have crossed a number of industries, but what I'm hearing also is that it's all the work is in the same vein and it's all aligned.
Yes, yes, it is. Sometimes we don't see that it all intersects, but it does. So I guess you can say I've been doing this kind of work all my life, or at least all of my adult life.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me a little bit about what made you transition outside of the clinical social work space after, I mean, that 23 years?
Hmm.
You know, all the,
Actually,
yeah.
well, I would say this. I had a friend who reminded me that I had actually been contemplating leaving the field of social work for years, just for various reasons. But I saw like a lot of I guess you can say, injustices that take place. Social work is a profession that is there to help the oppressed, but in them helping oppressed people, they also oppress people. Social work is also a profession that is predominantly white, that a lot of people don't realize. It actually was founded, a lot of the founders of social work here in the United States were African Americans. At some point, it shifted, whites took over, and they have created these different systems that keep blacks out early on in their careers. Like, so when they're starting out, just getting out of school, and you have all of these tests that they have to take, licensing tests, just so they can get a job. And if they don't pass the test, then they can't practice social work. But they went to school for this. And in most states, you have to have a master's degree before you can even practice. So these African American students have spent all of this money. And I had started to do research on that, to show that there was a significant breakdown in the number of African Americans that were failing the test, even if they went to a predominantly white institution for their education. They weren't passing, but their white counterparts were passing. And back when I was doing this, no one was talking about algorithms and how algorithms are biased, even when it comes to testing, and how most algorithms, when we talk about them being biased, they are really designed when they put in all of the information is not being applied for blacks. The information that is being inputted is being applied for those who are white, in which hence you have a lot of students graduates not passing licensing exams. And so I guess I made a couple of people mad. And so they did a witch hunt. And basically, I was like, well, you know what? I did 23 years. This is a great time to retire, and you could keep your little profession, and I'm going to do something else. So I left the field of social work in 2016 and have not looked back.
Wonderful. And not looking back, looking forward with all that transferable knowledge and skill set. Because again, the work is still in alignment in regards to having worked in that space, now working in a space, whether even if, and now more than ever, that skill set of social work is needed just to be an effective leader.
Yes,
yes. That passion, totally transferable.
Mm-hmm. And also being able to call people out on stuff in a nice, tactful way, or redirect people. And so when you're doing DEI work, there is a lot of redirecting, because you do have people who get up, get mad, they become aggressive, they get defensive. And so that's where those skills come into play, where, I'll sit there and listen to people like pour out their heart. They've been molested, they were raped. Like, you being mad over a black and white issue, I'm gonna need you to take that down a notch. Let's use your inside voice and let's try this again.
Would you say I was born for this? Not today.
Yeah. I'm usually like, not today. And then they'll get me in my professor mode of, and I don't get paid enough for this. So I'm gonna really need you to take it down a notch.
I know I have 20 years in higher ed, so I understand. I'm still in higher ed at this point. And but I have a significant amount of years in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space as well. So I love hearing how individuals in the space show up with a niched down approach. And it seems that you have really, really wrapped your arms around the need for that support when it comes to women of color. And it's almost taboo to talk about it though, because it's like when we do talk about it, it is, let's put it like this, on the slide, like I slid into a couple of your conversations that just happened to be streaming. And while I'm like, oh yes, been there, done that, I agree. You know, I'm giving all my little ad lib and amens in the background, but we don't come together. And how dare you think about having that conversation in the workplace?
Yeah.
We're just happy. We should be happy to be there.
Yes.
Like how it goes. What's your thought?
And which leads to this illusion that a lot of Black women have, that I'm the only person that's going through this, that other people aren't going through this. No one else is going to understand what I'm going through. So I'm going to keep this to myself. And so when they keep it to themselves, it becomes like it festers like a sore, like, you know, Langston Hughes said in his poem Harlem, and it starts to overtake you. And so then you start having depression, you have anxiety, you know, depending on what type of environment, you might have PTSD. Your eating patterns are off, your sleeping patterns are off. So now you're grumpy, and now you're being labeled as the angry Black woman. So there are all of these other factors that start to compound. And before you know it, then you snap. Like one day you just go off on everybody. And so it gets to this point that women start to explode, but it starts with, you don't feel that you have a safe space where you can go and have a conversation with someone who understands and who's going to validate your feelings. The feelings of Black women, especially in the workforce, are always negated. Even their experiences are negated, and their accomplishments and what they bring to the table, everything about them is negated.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because, as you say, we're in the workforce and you feel that you're the only one. And oftentimes we are the only one that may be on a certain level, because
Right.
it gets bottlenecked. I'm actually doing research now in regards to women that's in the pipeline, but how do we unclog the pipeline and get those women to where they need to be? And leadership looks different for all of us. However, we shouldn't have to not pursue or not consider other opportunities just because we've stopped out. And as they say, for women who are not of color, they have a glass ceiling because there is possibility or the illusion that we can shatter it. But when it comes to women of color, it's a concrete ceiling because that's it.
Mm-hmm. And I like to make this correction too, because I know the new terminology is so we don't step on people's toes and offend people, which I'm great for doing that, is that we say people of color. But when we kind of look at some of these positions, especially when it comes to like what we do, DEI, you will see Asians placed in these positions. You will see Hispanic women who pass for white that are placed in these positions. So I tend to be intentional. Like, no, I'm not talking about all people of color, because some of them don't identify with the whole people of color analogy. They consider themselves to be, if oh, Bob don't like you, well, I don't like you either. And so me being intentional that no, I'm not talking about people of color or women of color. The people that I am talking about are African American.
Gotcha. Totally got it. Totally in agreement, to be clear about that. Now, when we talk about this work, and I'm going to come back to more with the women, the Black women, the African American women, but just to back up just a little bit, what has been something for you that's been heavy on your heart when it comes to this work? diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, belonging. We can keep adding words. What's been heavy on your heart as a practitioner as of late?
I just think that for me, I think the heaviness for me is that when I have these conversations, that I take a lot of the backlash. And so I normally say, well, if I'm going through this, what are they going through at work? Like, I'm on the internet and I got people coming for my neck. And that, I know what takes place because I went through those situations. And so I speak from a place of knowing. And I think what's heavy for me is that I have women that reach out to me and tell me it was because of you, like you being bold on social media, that I'm sharing my story for the first time. And they telling me about something that happened 10 years ago, like something that they've been going through. And I'm having to say, girl, are you in therapy? Do you have an employment lawyer? Like, let's talk about some resources. You don't have to stay here. That you have a lot of women who are suffering in silence.
Yeah. And there is this thing that I've witnessed when it comes to Black women in leadership roles. So you get the opportunity to serve in a leadership capacity, and you're there, but you're there alone because you're really not a part of the team.
Right.
And although the work and the work is said to be inclusive, the work is said to be that you are in fact a part of the team. But when you are in those settings and you're at the table in those rooms and you're the only, there's already a weight that comes with that. And I don't think if you're not a person of color, especially a woman of color, you would not even, like, you can't even really properly articulate the burden that you feel that you have to carry. One, I can't speak for all of us. And then also you cannot double burden me. Now I'm employed for a job I didn't apply for, because now I am your mouthpiece. I am your eye candy. I am your everything to make sure that, look, we're doing the work. And it's like, but now I'm getting paid for the job I was hired to do, but now I've also taken on another role.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. You get paid one salary, but you're doing 5 jobs because you're wearing 5 different hats, especially when you find yourself being the only Black woman in maybe management or in the whole company. It is a lot. And I think it's something that our parents taught us to aspire to, be greater. But greatness is costing us. It's costing us physically and it's costing us emotionally, because in being great, we're also having to be silent. And we're having, like you said, we have to go in and represent all Black people. And I now tell, when I'm in those spaces and, and I get there and I say, that clearly was a microaggression. And I get, well, teacher, well, you're not paying me to teach nobody. I'm a participant. So y'all go figure it out. I'm going to sit here and wait, but teach you, I am not, unless you're going to cut me a check. You need to run me my coins before I tell you what you're doing wrong. This is going to be a consultation, what it's going to be. I did that in private practice when people would, oh, let me take you to lunch. And then they want to sit down and tell me their problems. As I was eating a salad, I would say, this is sounding like this is not a lunch date and this is turning into a therapy session. How would you like to pay for this? I have PayPal on my phone. I do not take checks because those things bounce, or you can give me cash. But paying for me to have a $10 lunch because I don't eat that much, no. To listen to your problems, you need to pay me. And I do. And I think, again, when we find ourselves in those spaces, realizing we don't have to carry that burden. I'm not the voice of all Black people. You either need to hire some more Black people, or if you want to add that to my job responsibility, we're going to need to sit down and negotiate my salary. I think Black women have to start finding their voice and using it and not being afraid. And if something happens, know that you have rights. I don't even think a lot of people realize they have rights.
Okay. Yeah, because and I was gonna say, so what do you say though when it's like you can feel it bubbling up? I want to say something. I'm just speaking, in general. I want to say something. I'm prepared to say something. I've been wanting to say something, but there's gonna be backlash. There's gonna be a cost to my speaking out and speaking up and finding my voice. What do you say to that woman?
That there's also a cost to your silence. I mean, so which one we gonna go with? Like you gonna pay a price. You're going to pay a price mentally and physically if you remain silent. If you speak up, you're going to pay a price. Which price are you willing to pay?
Yeah, I know there is also a price that's paid speaking up in a way, not so much in a defensive way, but speaking up in a sense that sometimes like that whole idea, and I'll ask you, your thoughts around imposter syndrome. What do you think about that? But when we think of, for me, where I'm going with that is we come with this imposter syndrome. You hear it over and over again about this. And sometimes I know I have personally even experienced where it wasn't others, it was me that had to do an internal self-check to say, why are you holding back? Why is it that you're not contributing? You're here. You have already proven. You don't have to keep proving over and over that you deserve to be here. Speak up. Be a part of the conversations. Be a part of the meeting. Be present. And part of that being present, a male mentor reminded me, never leave a meeting and your voice not be in the space. Let them know you've been there. So even if you say, Dr. Yazid, I agree with you. And here's why I agree with you on that point that you just made. And then it's a process called echoing. At least echo, but sometimes we have to also be mindful. We need to also step up and engage and be a part of ourselves. Not letting, again, not giving a pass to the other stuff, but I know for me, as I've moved up, because I was the only, it's like, can I really speak up? And it was like, for a hot minute, it was like, what are you waiting on permission for? You're here, show up.
Yes, but I think again, is that giving yourself permission, is the imposter syndrome. It's also knowing that maybe in the past you've spoken up on stuff that was maybe not as significant, that would maybe not be as detrimental to your career. And so, you sit there and you weigh and you balance. And sometimes you're saying, maybe it's not imposter syndrome, but I don't even fit in. Like it's not that I've arrived and I'm here and they hired me. Is that I get the sense that I'm not liked, that I'm not welcomed. So this has nothing to do with my skill level. This has more to do with them being intimidated of who I am and what I bring to the table. So therefore, they're not letting me bring anything to the table. Or when I get to this table, they want me to remain silent.
Now that's a hard one to swallow and to come in. That's a reality. Let me just say it's a reality more than we want it to be. And as we begin to see more and more individuals who are accepting the call, the role, the position of Chief Diversity Officer, Associate Vice President of Diversity, and now we want to flip the words, and I'm, innovation and inclusion in this and that. And my thing is do the work. We need the work done, like the real work.
But what we're saying is that they are putting people in these positions, and I look at the ages of the people that they're putting. And so they're not putting seasoned professionals in these positions anymore, even though when you read the job description, they want someone with like 20 years of experience. They are putting young professionals who really haven't lived. And so because I haven't really lived, I I'm still growing. And so this gives you a chance to groom me to be the person you want me to be. And for me to also realize that I don't realize that I'm a puppet in this position and I don't have any real power. But when you put a seasoned professional that comes in and they know the lay of the land and they're saying, okay, this is where we need to start. And they have accountability, measurements in place. And they don't want that. So hence they hire the young professionals. Nothing against the young professionals, but also understand why some of you are being put in these positions and you don't have an ounce of experience. Because I'm looking at the people that they're putting in, and I'll say that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and also, as I consider conversations I've had with, because a number of people will call, they're like, okay, you've done this for a while. And so people will call, finding me on LinkedIn, and they'll call just to kind of do an overview. How did you get started? What's going on? What's trending? Blah, blah, blah. And what's interesting is that individuals are getting hired. The company doesn't know what the expectations are, but they've cut and paste a job description. Then you have someone, as you said, who has not really had the experience, not even strategic planning, not even, even how to engage or disengage when it comes to critical conversations. Then they give you this, the analogy I've been using, they put you in a sandbox and keep the same. You can play in the box, but don't keep do not splash the sand. Then we're going to have some problems. But we're going to come and see every now and then to keep it all in the box, and you stay in that box. That means you have no influence. There's no power. You have no impact with systems and systemic issues, policies and procedures, none of that. So what I'm noticing is that a lot of these positions, and I challenge corporations to look at this. You have a program manager who's hosting events. That's not that's not the core. That's a Band-Aid.
Yeah, I'm seeing that they're hiring, that the positions are those, or they're hiring, the person is diverse DEI, and then it's in talent recruitment. And so I'm like, okay, so they do hiring, they're recruit. You're basically saying you hired them, they got DEI in their title, but their job is to go out there and find you Black and brown skinned people to work for the company. I also think the other issue that we have is that companies, people attack me and they say, well, diversity is more than race. Well, yes, it is. But when you got old white men as leaders of companies, we got to start with, they don't want Black people there. Like, let's call it what it is. They don't want Black people there. So you got to get through, let's get the Black people there so we can get the LGBTQ people there, so we can get the people that have a disability that's there, so you can bring everybody else in. Because right now they are stuck on, oh my God, they want me to hire Black people. They ain't even got to, wait, you are LGBT. How many alphabets is there? What is that? Like, oh, and well, you got a disability. You really don't look like me. Like, you're not perfect. Like, there's so many layers to it. But that's the argument that people try and bring to the table, is that, well, it's not about race. You got to start somewhere. And that's where companies are choosing to start, is with race. They're not starting with your sexuality. They're not starting with, you might be Muslim, or, you might be a Jehovah's Witness. That's like, okay, I can't work on certain days, and I can't come to the company cookout because y'all don't know how to separate y'all meats. Like, it's all these other things that you can't get to that because you haven't even dealt with what they feel is the glaring issue of having to incorporate Black people into their companies.
Right. And then you bring up a great point, because we often neglect to even address the cultural norms. And you have those that are visible and those that are invisible. And those invisible are the ones that usually are anchoring the experiences that we are having, but don't talk about them.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And we don't talk about how all of these, they're unconscious bias, but they all intersect. And so, and I like to use myself as an example, like, and with companies, it usually starts with the resume. They're looking for stuff on your resume to say, don't hire you. And so, I'm Black because I went to HBCU. Like, and you can look at the time frame that I went to an HBCU when HBCUs was popping. Like everybody was going to HBCUs. They ain't have to campaign for people to come, but then when you look at my last name, it's just like, well, is she, she's Muslim. That's an assumption that's made because I'm not Muslim. And I tell people the only thing that saves me is my dad spelled my first name Kiri like a boy instead of a girl. So usually when I come in, they think they're getting a Muslim Black male.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so then it's just, I usually get like, oh, can I help you? And I'll be like, well, I'm here for such and such. Oh, well, we're waiting on Dr. Yazid. That would be me. Oh, you're a woman. Yeah, I know you was expecting something totally different, but this is what you go get. Because I'm used to it.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, but it's based on what they've seen on your resume that they have painted this picture of you. And I'll usually sit there and say, Google is free. Like if you Google me, I have a digital footprint. You can Google me to see that I'm not a Muslim Black man. Yeah. Like maybe not that I'm not Muslim, but definitely that I'm not a man, But yeah, I will walk in for presentations and just I'm not what they're expecting.
Wow.
And there's a shift in the atmosphere that, and someone told me this recently when I did a speaking engagement, and she's a white woman, and she said, when you walk in the room, you command respect. She said, when you walked in, I was just like, oh, that's her. That's her. She was like, and the way she carries herself, we better have all our stuff straight when she gets started. Like, it was, and so, and I think that does go back to knowing who you are, but just saying, I'm not going to put up with this. I know how you treat others who come into this space, and I deserve the same respect that you give everyone else. And so it does come through the way that I carry myself, the way that I speak, and how I de-escalate a situation. Like, and me not being afraid, I think at the age of 52, that I will walk away. I will tell you where you can go and what you can do with your table on my way out the door. That's kind of always been me too. So,
I was going to ask, where does that come from? Because it's a confidence, I think, that some of us, including myself, we have to exercise that muscle. It doesn't come natural. Where does that come from for you?
I think from mine, it comes from the women on my maternal side, from my mother's side of the family, especially my mom. Like I was shy growing up, and she was like, you can be an introvert in the house. When you go outside, you need to learn how to be an extrovert. She sent me to different schools and I was a part of desegregation, and I used to come home and tell her how much I hated it. And she said, that's fine. You hate it all you want. But what I'm preparing you for is that when you become an adult, you will know how to walk in any room and hold a conversation with anyone and not be intimidated. And so she said, so you can hate it at home, but when you go to school, I need you to like it. You gotta, so she taught me early how to code switch, I don't want to hear you complaining. I don't want it because I'm giving you a better opportunity. Now, and they tell you about how they walk barefoot and all that kind of stuff. But I later learned that my mom did not have it hard. She went to private school, until she reached her heart. That was her hard till she reached like 9th grade. Then she went to public school for the first time in her life. But But she did learn how to navigate within different circles, and she was real good at it. She also had this confidence that I always admired about her. And she would walk into a room with the most educated people, even though she only had a few years of college, and she could hold a conversation with you. She was well versed. She could hold an argument with you, but when she walked in a room, people would be like, oh, there she go. Like you already knew what to expect. And I think she pushed me, and my brother says this all the time. She pushed me more to step outside of my comfort zone than she did him.
Okay. And that's a good lesson for many of us to understand that there are different scenarios that have helped to craft us and strengthen us in those areas. And so I think we also owe it to others who are coming up behind us to do the same, whether you're, a mom or a spiritual mom, a natural mom, an auntie, we have to make sure we take our stand, because to me, while we are having more conversations, there's a whole lot of work that still needs to be done. And we're sending a whole nother generation. Now we have 5 generations in the workplace for the first, this first go round. And that's a whole nother topic when we talk about these 5 generations with their different approaches to communication, a different definition when it comes to loyalty and commitment. And it's, I know some will say, oh, the younger generations, they don't know what loyalty is. They do. It's just redefined, in my opinion. And
right.
So
and that the younger generation is also going to take less BS.
Correct.
Like they're going to call you on it, but they have no problems in saying, you know what, for what y'all paying me and for what you got me going through, I can go sit at home and make YouTube videos. Like I can go sit in my bedroom at my mama's house and figure out how to get paid off of social media. I don't have to deal with you. And so they go in with that mentality of, I'm either an entrepreneur or I will figure out how to make a way and eat ramen noodles till I figure it out. Like their mindset, I have 2 of them in my, right now at my house. I got 23-year-old and a 20-year-old. Their mindset is different.
Yeah. Yes, I pray that I'm around long enough to see how the work that's being laid, by yourself and others in this space, because it's so much progress that has been made, but there's so much more work to be done. But to see, as you say, their zealousness, their uncompromising spirit, and their tenacity to rebound from what some of us taken, and it'll knock us out, take the wind out of us, but they'll show back up. And so it'll be interesting to see how this progresses.
Yes, I agree. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to couple just quick questions for you, when it comes to organizations that are looking to diversify their leadership, what one piece of advice or instruction would you provide them?
Assess who you already have within the company. Now, if you don't have anyone, then you have a problem. Okay. But you should have at least 1 or 2 that have been loyal, that they've been there, they have worked diligently, they have helped you to be successful, and they've probably been waiting for an opportunity to move into management, probably have asked several times and have been denied. And so my first response would be, look at your data, look at who is currently within your company that like promote within. Let's start with who you have versus bringing in someone new that you have to teach the lay of the land all over.
Understood. And it is, as we know, cheaper to retain than it is way over.
It is.
Yeah. Let's shift our focus on the Black female who is currently looking right now. As you know, we are going through the Great Resignation, and I will say Black women led the charge of that. back in 22, right before COVID started. We were already hanging up our shingles on our own. Those of us who didn't leave and resign, we still found a way to dual role it. You know, I have my 9 to 5, but I also have my heart work, you know, that I make sure that is up and going, and I'm building that out. And so now we find ourselves in this space, and now things look different. The workplace is changing right before our eyes because of COVID. Some of that was coming, but now that we didn't have a choice but to kind of get some things in order as we move forward because of COVID. What would you say to those who may be in transition or those who may be looking for promotion?
I think my first piece of advice would be don't settle. Because I think a lot of times we settle. I don't care what the job description says, you're probably overqualified, apply anyway. Even if they saying they need 20 years of experience and you have to apply, you know, don't let that deter you, and know your worth.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we know our worth, but we're being humble at the same time. And I think in this great resignation that we're having, and Black women are looking for better opportunities, in those opportunities means that you have to know your worth, that you can't settle for just anything that comes along. And that sometimes it means you have to step outside of your comfort zone, because I always say that's where the magic happens anyway. And apply for those unrealistic positions, but it's always been your dream job, because you never know. You just might get it.
Yeah, that is so true. Now, on November 3rd of this year, you penned an article, Why Black Women Hurt Each Other in the Workplace. And there's a famous quote that we know about, what happens in our house stays in our house. I chuckled because, my goodness, do we not all know that? But what would you say then to the Black woman that's working with the Black woman, or that needs to be mindful that you just might be the barrier for this Black woman? What advice would you have for her?
She's difficult. And I think I would say to her, don't take it personal, that the issue, that what she's dropping on you can be for several factors. It can be because she's intimidated that you the next Black person that's going to take her position. That's usually if they think you want their position, or you're there to take their position and you're being groomed and you just don't know it. That she's probably bitter, or she's also seeing her white male counterparts treat their insubordinates the way that she is treating you. And so this is learned behavior, and this is what she thinks a leader does. She hasn't been appropriately trained. Now, she also could just have some personal issues, and she's taking her personal issues out on you. I have been the person, again, I will politely say, you know, I don't know what's going on. You know, you kind of rough around the edges. Did I do something? Because I've been in that situation where I was a new kid on the block, and, you know, actually was at HBCU, and I'll come in and it's just like all the Black women are mad at me. And everything that I would bring to the table, it would be shot down. But then I finally started saying, well, okay, if you don't like my idea, what's your idea? And then it became, I looked at the data, which, you know, we all supposed to be doing research, and, you know, pointing out, well, you're mad at me, but the reason the department is losing so many students is because you're the gatekeeper. You teach this class. This is where we're losing the majority of our students. Here's the data. So, like, I need you to stop projecting whatever you have that's going on onto me and fix the problems that you have. I'm not your problem. I'm trying to be your solution. I am very adamant about, I'm not going to carry other people's responsibilities. That I'm not going to be the brunt of your jokes. You know, I worked at this HBCU, and for a year, like, I would come to work and be good morning. Nobody was speaking. I'd be like, well, I guess your morning wasn't good. I just keep, I'm here to teach and educate students, not deal with your pettiness, because that is what this is becoming. And I
Yeah.
found my own space and my own lane. And when they told me no, I ventured out, because the HBCU is a company. I ventured out in a company and found other people who would mentor me, show me the ropes, and teach me what I needed to do. And eventually they figured out that they couldn't hold me back, that no matter what they did, I was still going to be successful.
Yeah.
Did they still speak to me? No. Like, did they find fault with everything that I did? Yes. Did I care? No.
See, and that's the your last words. That's what we all need to hear. Stop caring so much.
Yeah, just like, if you're going to work and you're doing your job, or
Mhm.
you're excelling in your job, people are not going to like you. And at the end of the day, I'm like, that's okay. As long as my paycheck is deposited into my bank account on time, my students are graduating and attending graduate school, and they're going to top graduate schools, and they're graduating from those schools, and they're coming back and telling me that because of what I taught them, those schools were a breeze.
Wow.
I've done my job. Like, I'm not, you can never speak to me again, and I'm gonna be just fine. I'm gonna drink my coffee, eat my cinnamon roll in the morning, and be good morning. Oh, you still having a bad morning? We on year 2. Okay, then I'm gonna go to my office. You got some personal problems. I don't.
I love it, talk about being freed up, because we come in again, we dual role, we double burdened, with having to do the job. Now we've got this other job that they're sliding, and then other special projects, and now you're representing the, arrays. People don't want to speak to you, and if you're the only, you're having to navigate a whole bunch of other stuff. So you have all that, and you still like, I'm going to be centered and come and rock it out.
Child, meditation in the morning, gospel music. Like, I be praising the Lord all the way to work, yoga. Like, I had an office with the view. I took advantage of my view. I would go out, walk, just get fresh air when I felt myself getting frustrated. Like, just knowing how to disengage. And sometimes that becomes, even with that, your Black counterpart who is making your life a living hell at work, you still got to know that you need to take care of you at the end of the day. And I think that's where a lot of people fail, is that they forget to take care of themselves.
Now you have the platform now to communicate and convey a message in the nick of time to the listeners. When it comes to, I'm going to stick with women of color, Black women, and advice or a word of wisdom that you would give them as they move forward in their respective places. What one thing or phrase or advice would you give them?
Your job doesn't define who you are. Like, it's a part of who you are, but it is not the total sum of who you are. Your job is not the alpha and the omega of you. Your job is just a piece of the pie, but it's not the whole pie. And so, knowing that it doesn't define you, find the other things that bring you joy in life. Find those other things that define who you are as a woman. Mm-hmm. And bring some of that into the workspace as well. Like, because that helps to reassure you of who you are, and it helps to keep you grounded as well. And I know for me, I knew that, yes, my job was a social worker, or yes, my job was as an assistant professor, but I knew that my calling was that I uplift, inspire, and motivate people of color, but especially Black women. That has been me throughout my entire professional career. And so it didn't matter where I was, where I worked at, that was my calling. And my calling is bigger than my job or the career title that you've given me.
Well said, because there is a true distinction between those two things, and getting a clear understanding around that allows us to be more intentional, as you said. So that amazing advice, amazing advice. Now, our time has come to wrap up on this conversation. I do extend the invitation to circle back. There's so much more for us to tap into, but this has been very rich, and I appreciate your transparency when it comes to this topic, right at the beginning to the end, because that's what we need if we're really trying to make change. So I applaud you right now, celebrate you for being so honest in this space that is really cloudy, and it's heavy work. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. How can people get in touch with you?
I'm heavy on LinkedIn, so you can follow me on LinkedIn. I have fun on Instagram, so totally different personality over there. Where it's actually my personality, but it's me not talking about heavy stuff, for me having fun. And my branding across all social media is Dr. Curiazi, so it's easy to find me. And you can visit my website, drcuriazi.com. There you can check out the services that I offer in regards to speaking and training within the DEI space. Also, the group that I offer that's going to be starting in January for those who are struggling in that space. And then I also offer career strategy sessions for individuals who are like, I don't know what to do. I'm dealing with harassment, all of these biases that they're throwing at me, these microaggressions. I'm ready to quit. But before I quit, let me sit down and have a conversation with someone. And so I'm that safe space for those people to come into. And check me out on Amazon. Got 2 books over there. Shut Them Down, Black Women, Racism, and Corporate America. And that one's been out for a year now. And then our new release, which came out in November, is Everyday Struggle: How Toxic Workspaces Impact Black Women.
Awesome. And that is also on Amazon.
Yes, both of them are on Amazon.
Wonderful. Look forward to supporting you the more as we move forward. It's been a joy getting to know you.
Thank you. Same here.
Yeah. So as I said, this platform, we are here to support. And so please do keep in touch. We'll be sure to do the same, okay?
Will do. Thank you again.
Thank you. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in one more time for another conversation in the nick of time. You could not have paid to learn more in this short amount of time in regards to some strategy. And I know you're leaving here with some tools and some information in regards to how you can better show up, how you can better support, and how you can also just be better in all that you're doing. Want to make sure that we thank Sparkman Pathway to Careers, Sparkman Publications, KSTL 690 Jubilee, and Covenant Exchange LLC. Thank you so much for your continued support. And thank you. Want to make sure that you remember that you are to live out success as you define it. Because guess what? You already have everything you need to be successful. Just tap into it. Until next time.